Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Matthew Dickerson. Tech Talk. Sit back and relax. It's time to talk technology.
Greetings, time travellers. Lock in your coordinates for right here and right now, because there is no better place to be in time and or space than right here at Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Well done you on your mastery of the time-space continuum. Now, in today's episode, we're diving into your bloodstream, riding on the backs of nanobots for some precision curing of everything that ails you. And now, if you've heard about supersonic flight, and that sounds like a bit of a thrill for you, then you are going to love the concept of hypersonic flight. We've got some details that just might send your imagination right into overdrive. And we're all about initiative here at Tech Talk. And so some clever cookies have found an excellent way to heat their home, with a little help from AI, but not as you'd expect. But all of that in good time. First, let's get things in order. And the first point of order is to bring our resident techspert in on the act. Welcome to the microphone, Matthew Dickerson.
I only heard the term techspert recently, and I like it, so I've stolen it. So I'm glad you're onto the system as well.
Right, so that's going to be the regular intro then.
Why not? I do like it.
Cool.
I think it's one little steal. Now, this week I had an interesting little journey that I took where I had to drive to a regional centre a couple of hours away. And in the old days with GPS in your car, you would put in the average speed that you would do on a highway. So if the speed limit was 100, you probably figured you couldn't average 100, but you might average 90 or maybe 95, and then average speed on a suburban road and average speed on a local road. So there were typically 3 speed entries you'd put in. And I remember I used to play around with GPSs in the old days, and I'd fiddle with those 3 speeds, and you'd kind of get it vaguely close to when you'd get to a certain location. But of course, it depended on traffic on the day and a whole range of variables. But that was about as good as it got. Modern GPS in a car, as you know, in your car, relies on metadata. So it looks at all the other people and their phones, their phone data, if you like, and looks at how fast they go from A to B, and it coordinates all that information and says, I reckon on this journey, on average, someone's going to take 1 hour and 52 minutes to go from there to there. So I got in the car, put in the destination, and looked at the time that I was going to get there. I went along as a very obedient resident and sat exactly on the speed limit, and I have checked the speedo in the car against an app on the phone to make sure it's accurate.
We did talk about this before, about how the speedo in the car isn't quite right.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I was going along at an accurate 100 kilometres an hour. That was fine. And what I noticed...
You nerded out on this, which is great. I love it. Okay.
But what I noticed as I drove was my destination, my arrival time, started off, let's say it was going to get there at 10:28 in the morning. 10:28 a.m. was when I was going to arrive. And as I drove, a little while later, it went to 10:29. A little while later, it went to 10:30. And so the only conclusion I could come to was that I was being a good citizen sitting on the speed limit, but no
everyone else was being naughty. There you go.
So I started to think about that, and I thought police obviously set themselves up at different locations where they know there might be people speeding. Yeah. The old classic bottom of a hill was a terrible place, I used to think, for a police person to sit.
Yeah.
But they sit themselves where they think people are going to speed. But maybe, I don't want to give too many ideas to the police here, but maybe they could just use metadata and say, we know here is a road that on average has people speeding, because their metadata shows they get from A to B in a time that's not possible if you sit on the speed limit. So my ETA ended up being about 5 minutes later, which is not a lot, I realised.
So even though you realised your time was going backwards, you still sat on the speed limit?
Even though I realised that everyone else, and the 30 cars behind me on the road gave it away as well. No, there wasn't a lot of traffic on that road, but obviously everyone else speeds on that road. But I still, it doesn't help, does it? If I get pulled over by the police and they say you're speeding, I go, but everyone else does it, sir.
Yeah, no, but if I see that ETA is getting further and further away, there's no way I'm going to sit on this.
Well, funnily enough, I did hear a particular person at a location, a regional location one day, telling me that the unofficial speed limit in this area is this, which was about 20 k's above the official speed limit. I went, I'm not sure that cuts the mustard.
That's a bit of an exaggeration, but it's very difficult to watch that ETA.
Keep creeping up.
Creeping away.
Everyone else is getting there faster than me. So, but it is fascinating what you can do.
Extremely fascinating. Yeah. Very good. All right, folks, enough of this fiffle-faff. It's time for our first story. Now, the power-to-weight ratio of an EV is nothing short of fantastic, hitting 0 to 100 in the space of a joyful gasp. And that's not even in the high-performance models. So, heads are turning in the heady world of motorsport, where Formula One holds the benchmark for the fastest circuit racing in the land, because Formula E is closing the gap and may just become the sport of choice for the true adrenaline junkies. Now, Matt, Formula E acceleration has it all over F1, but the top speeds are just about there now.
They're getting there. There's a new Gen 4 machines that have come out in Formula E. And I must admit, when I saw Formula E launched in 2014, I thought, that's pretty good. I like the idea of that. And some of the purists poo-pooed it because they said, look, there's no noise except there's a bit of a whir, or there's a bit of a wind noise as the car goes past at incredible speeds.
You got to hear that squealing.
Yeah, you want to hear that squealing. But it's quite fascinating because the first time I started watching Formula E, it was a bit like watching Mario Kart or using Mario Kart. Because
with the sound down?
Well, with the sound down. But they had spots on the track that you'd run over to gain a temporary boost. And it was a very tactical process. So let's say it was a 10-lap race. That boost would give you a boost for maybe a lap and a half. So do I use that at the beginning of the race and try and get away from some of my competitors, or do I save it to try and do an overtake, or do I save it to try and stop myself being overtaken? So it was very tactical, and there was no right answer, which is obviously the best way to race, but it was quite fascinating. But sometimes
you could get a temporary boost.
You got a temporary boost, and sometimes people would go for the temporary boost where they'd run over a certain spot, but it wouldn't actually get quite on the right spot. So they'd lose a bit of time going just slightly out of the way around a corner and then not run over the right spot. So they have to do it again the next lap. So
I've got another question. Are you allowed to throw bananas on the track?
Yeah, that's the obvious thing, isn't it? Some oil cans or bananas throw out the back.
But I love the idea of a temporary boost.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So Formula E, and it's a bit gimmicky, but why not? You've got that capability there. And Formula E, batteries weren't as good in 2014. The electric engines weren't as good in 2014, or electric motors weren't as good in 2014. But they've slowly been improving and getting better all the time. And I've watched a bit of it here and there, and they seem to have gotten a following, but nowhere near F1 following at the moment is crazy. There are hundreds of thousands of people that go and watch Formula One each weekend that Formula One's on.
Was it a couple of decades ago? It was really sort of lagging a bit with its popularity, people following it, and now it is back as one of the key sports for generating revenue. Yeah,
crazy. Who are the biggest sporting names on the planet? And often you would look to Formula One because it is international. They do go across the whole globe throughout the season.
Yeah, people like Verstappen have become like household names. Yeah.
They're exactly right. So, how is Formula E going versus Formula One? And we're at the point now, which again, I'm sure some purists would hate this idea, but Formula E on a single lap, on a qualifying lap, for example, would actually outperform a Formula One car on many tracks that they go around the circuit. Some Formula One would still win. And the difference here is the acceleration 0 to 100 is faster in a Formula E car than Formula One. So that's quite incredible.
Well, it's impressive because Formula One was proud of its acceleration.
Exactly right, yep. Now, then you get the cornering capabilities. The Formula E cars are a little bit heavier, so they probably sit on the track a bit nicer. They've got the same aerodynamics as a Formula One car, so they're quite good from a cornering perspective. But, of course, they can get out of the corners quicker because they've got the acceleration, and they've got four-wheel drive. So you've got the ability to accelerate using all four wheels, better acceleration, better pulling you out of the corner as well as pushing you out of a corner. At this stage, their top speed is not quite the same as the top speed of Formula One.
So what are we looking at here? What's the difference there?
Well, you can probably get up to maybe 360, 370 in a Formula One car. Formula E, maybe 350. And again...
So it's not that far
It's not that far off, but on tracks that are... There are some tracks...
that have got a long straight, that could count for a lot.
That's
but
right.
It's still the accelerations. You've got those hairpin turns and you've got, it's so many corners there, and that's part of the skill of Formula One driving is not flipping out in those corners.
So I would love to see them compared against each other. Now, it's probably not going to happen in the near future because the length of a race. So a Formula One race is often, it could be up to 2 hours, an hour and a half, that time of length. They don't do those length of races in Formula E just because of the battery capacity. So they've typically got about a 55 kilowatt hour battery in the Formula E cars. Now, for us driving our cars around the street, 55 kilowatt hours is fine. But when you're doing 350 kilometres an hour, the air resistance is going to make it so that you're going to chew through that battery fairly quickly. So the races in Formula E are quite short. And the power available, so the new Gen 4 cars have got 600 kilowatts available as the power, and that's in qualifying bursts, or that's in when they have it in burst mode. So when they're doing a qualifying lap, 600 kilowatts. The normal racing, they've got 450 kilowatts to extend the life of their battery, obviously, to give them a bit of extra length on their battery, and then just use the 600 kilowatts occasionally. So if you did a qualifying lap, Formula 1 versus Formula E, on many tracks, Formula E would win. If you had a maybe a 5-lap, 10-lap race, Formula E would win. You start going much longer than that, then you've got to refuel the Formula E car, which is a little bit slower because you've got to change batteries.
Well, I wonder if this is going to accelerate, and pardon the pun there, but accelerate the development of the drop-in, drop-out batteries.
Possibly a whole range of things might happen. They're getting the
2.5 seconds in a pit stop to drop in a battery.
That's right. They're getting, and back in the old days of Formula One, they used to refuel. That used to be a thing.
Yeah.
But they found there were some incidents that occurred where someone would refuel.
Yeah, was that Nicky Lauda's?
No, he had an accident
that was
with
an
fuel.
accident.
But in the pits themselves, when they're refueling it, you might get a little bit of splash of fuel that comes out. Of course, you've got hot engines, and anyway, they had fires, they had people injured. So you fuel up at the beginning of a race, and that's it. You can't refuel throughout the whole race. But that used to be a part of the pit stop, was the refueling. Maybe with Formula E, part of the pit stop could be while you're changing tyres, the battery drops out and drops back in from underneath. I'm not sure. That's a thing they could work on. But over a short race, I think that'll be fascinating to see just how well you go. Going for, say, a 10-lap race, having Formula 1 and Formula E cars on the grid together, that would be fascinating. And just the strength, that acceleration versus the top speed. So they might get overtaken down the main straight of Formula E car, but then around a few of the tight corners, they get back in front of the Formula 1 car. And it'd be a great to and fro, I think.
I think this race is going to be decided by the spectators. And that, if Formula E can prove that it is as or more exciting than at Formula 1, Formula 1 is going to become a thing of the past.
Well, if they get, I think, my personal opinion is more overtaking. So that's one of the things they've tried to do with Formula 1 regulations, more overtaking. And MotoGP is probably more exciting than Formula 1 because you do have overtaking and you have a whole range of lead changes.
The arm wrestle for the lead when you've got those guys tussling for the lead there, and it's getting exciting because they're using those corners.
So they're still working on battery energy density. They think they've got about another 15 to 20% that can be gained in energy density in those batteries in the near future. So that'll help that argument. It's still not going to match fuel. Like fuel has got good energy density. So you can't compete with that easily. The reason we talk about planes and what else we might do with planes, maybe sustainable aviation fuel, is because of that energy density. But I'm pretty excited about it. I think the noise is a thing. People love Formula 1 for the noise, and you can't go within QE of a Formula 1 track without having your earplugs in. It's just deafening.
But I wonder how loyal they'll be to the noise if the other stuff gets more exciting.
Well, I think the way you'd prove it is to put Formula 1 and Formula E in a race together.
Yeah.
And maybe Formula 1 doesn't want to do that. So they want to stay away from that. But that's exciting that Formula E is getting that good. And the other thing that's fantastic is that an electric powertrain at the moment with their Formula E cars is getting up to 96% of the electric energy turning into forward motion. Whereas in internal combustion engines, around 25 to maybe 50%. And part of that reason is the noise. It's converting that energy, energy that's in the petrol, it's converting that into noise, it's converting that into heat as well as forward motion. But in the electric motor, it's converting so much into motion. So anyway, that's pretty exciting.
Now that internet shopping's become such a dominant force, there's a lot of trust that goes into sizing. Trust that really hasn't been earned, though. Let's face it, anyone who has purchased clothes online probably has at least one or two stories of abject disappointment when those clothes arrived finally. And that amounts to enormous amounts of wasted textiles or frustrating returns. So is there maybe an opening here for AI to save fashion heartache, Matt?
Oh, absolutely. And I did a research on this because I did wonder about the sizes. How did we come up with size 8 or size 10 or size 12 in mainly female sizing?
Yeah.
So there was an actual logic to the numerical sizing. You used to, in the old days when sizing first came out, it was a woman's bust size minus a constant. And so if you had a size 14, there would be a translation to add 20, add 15, I'm not sure what the constant was, but add a constant to it would give you the bust size. But a 14 compared to a 12 actually was 2 inches difference in bust size. So as you went down each size, the change in size was constant throughout that, and then the constant gave you an actual measurement, something you could measure against. But of course, that's measuring one part of the body, and that was it. And no one actually knew the fact that you would measure your bust and then go, right, well, I'm actually a size 14 based on my bust size. So that kind of got thrown out, and then it was just a variation. Now, there was an Australian standard, and it may still exist to this day, Australian Standard 1344-1997. And that Australian standard was a formal national standard to standardise women's clothing sizes. So it was quite, I read a little bit of it. It was quite thoughtful. It was quite technical in the sizing. And then the manufacturers completely ignored it.
Because people wanted to be a smaller and smaller size. So the
it.
manufacturers just started pandering.
That's exactly it. And that's the problem. Even in men, it used to be you buy a size 30 and that meant a 30-inch waist. So you'd measure that.
Well, that makes sense.
That kind of makes sense as well. And then we got medium and large and extra large and a whole range of things. And I'm not a medium, but I bought some T-shirts recently and I tried on, I would typically think I'm normally a large. I tried on a large and I went, this is swimming on me. I tried on the medium and I reckon I could have gone to a small. I'm not a small, but a medium, even that feels too small for me, but that was the right size because, again, we've now got vanity sizing.
Yeah.
And people are loyal to their clothing brand based on vanity sizing. So if I'm a female, size 14 in one brand and size 10 in another brand, I'm going to size 10 every single time. Same with jeans. If I try on a pair of jeans and they're a 34, but another brand's a 32, my ego feels a bit better if I'm a 32. So
I'm going to share with you, I've enjoyed, since COVID, I've enjoyed probably one too many pies, and I've gone to a 2XL, right? And I bought a shirt online, 2XL, and I tell you what, I could have rolled out a swag and slept in it. And so it was tent size. So I ordered a large, and I haven't worn a large since I was at university.
And that's what's happening.
And so I'm now wearing a large.
That's right. So now I can say, oh, James, he's only a large. So he's pretty skinny. He's a large. So
he doesn't need to go on that diet. Get off his case.
That's right. So it's fascinating. And what we see now because of all of this is you get people who think they're smaller than they are, but also when people order online, exactly as you mentioned, they'll order a bunch of clothes around a variety of sizes. So I think I'm a 12, but in this brand, I'm not sure. So I'll order a 10, or maybe I'll fit into a 10 and a 12 and maybe a 14 because maybe their sizing's wrong. So I'll go 14 as well. And they get those clothes. And my daughters are terrible at this. They'll order several different sizes. They'll get them, they'll try them on, muck around with it. Right. And then they'll send back the ones they didn't want. Or maybe they don't like any of them.
Oh.
It's a constant
I can't
process.
send the clothes back.
No, but they order deliberately multiple. They know they're not going to keep them.
That's part of what
all.
they factor in.
This is all part of it. So this is the scary part.
I'd just rather go to a shop.
Well, that's a part of it, but we're probably past the age of the
I'm
of the
a boomer now.
190 billion pounds is what fashion retailers say they spend in postage.
That's UK pounds, right?
That's UK pounds, that's right. So that's quite scary in terms of how much is being spent on just sending it, coming back. And often they'll be, buy this dress and there's no postage to get it to you, no postage to send it back. They'll send a bag with it to actually say, here's the bag, you can send it back if you don't want it.
Also, they know that you're buying all these sizes.
That's right.
You're sending some back.
And they figure you'll buy more ultimately.
See, the energy that's going into this, there's a lot of energy that goes into that, as well as cost.
Cost, energy, a whole range of things. There are trucks out there delivering parcels that are just things that are going to go in both directions. So is there a technology solution? Hopefully there's a technology solution for lots of things. So we've got a few things now. Modern smartphones have got pretty good cameras, obviously. And there are tools out there, 3D look, true fit, easy size. Use your smartphone camera to give you an accurate digital model of your particular body. So I assume you get naked and then stand in front of that and take photos, which is never a good thing to do.
Be careful.
To create an image, or maybe wear very tight clothing, create an image of your body, which then is used. Now, the manufacturers have got to get on board here as well. But if they subscribe to the same ones, then they can say, here, you've got 3D look, for example. Here's our 3D look particular garment. You can place that over your digital, your avatar of you to see whether it fits or not.
And you can see where it's bulging in the wrong spots.
That's right. You can see all of that. Okay. And you can get those. So you've also got, Google has got a virtual try-on, a Doji, WearFits, DressX. So they're all virtual try-on.
Is it possible to bust a virtual seam?
Possibly.
I'm going to get in that small.
If they're doing it legitimately, they should do that. You got to suck into zip
You're
it
not
up the
getting
back.
that fly up, mate. Not even virtually.
That's right.
Right.
So this is where we possibly could head, where we're getting to the point where you'll do it all virtually, and then when you order that particular garment, you know it's going to fit. Now, you mightn't like it when you get it, still. You mightn't like the colour, you mightn't like the way it sits, whatever, but at least you know the sizing will be right, because it is a problem, and it's a problem that's driven by ego, that's driven by vanity, that's driven by manufacturers trying to sell more, but it's a problem we could solve with technology. So you've got AI shopping assistants as well, Daydream, One-Off, Phia, spelled Phia. their digital stylist. So they'll not only look at the sizing, but they'll say, do you really think that colour goes with your eyes, James? So they'll help you style that.
So completely judgmental, yeah?
Absolutely. And more to the point...
Does my bum look big in this?
That's right, the classic question. More to the point, they will actually scan thousands of different websites to say, right, if you want this particular site, this particular manufacturer doesn't subscribe to one of these digital avatars yet, but we've looked at the sizing, we've looked at a whole range of things in that sizing, and we think that our advice to you is you should buy a size 12 in this, because we've taken all that information on board without having accurate information. So I think there are some potential apps out there that will make it better for us. And I did start to wonder if the manufacturers jumped on board and said, hey, use our whatever tool it might be, that would drive the adoption quite quickly. But I did wonder whether or not the manufacturers are interested. Is it in their best interest for people just to order a bunch of clothes? And some, don't send it back. They don't get around to sending it back. So they're stuck with those clothes. So do they generate more sales because their sizing conundrum, or would they prefer to get it right without having to ship clothes out and ship them back? I mean, what's the cost of that versus the extra sales they get? I don't have that data, but I do know technology can possibly solve this problem.
Some of our older listeners out there, and I'm guessing not very many though, may be able to share their experience of supersonic flight aboard the Concorde. Its last flight was in 2003, and there's been nothing like it since. The Concorde was able to hit an impressive speed of Mach 2, doing the London to New York run in under 3 hours. But hold on to your stomachs, folks. That is all likely to be rendered at quaint antiquity if hypersonic flight becomes a thing ever. Matt, what's this lure of hypersonic flight, and how much of a possibility is it really?
It is a possibility. There's some pretty serious testing that's being done. Now, when we say hypersonic, I don't know if there's a strict definition of
like
hypersonic.
Star Wars.
It does a bit, doesn't it? Yeah, or played mode maybe. So they're talking about going to Mach 10.
Wow.
So that would be Sydney to LA, maybe an hour and a bit to go that sort of distance.
But I'm just thinking, how's the acceleration on that? What sort of G-forces do your passengers have to have trained for?
You probably have to get there slowly, so you're not exposing too much.
Yeah, they'll have to do their homework about how fast you can accelerate, but you can get to a top speed of Mach 10.
Mach 10. So you've got to accelerate to then. You've got to decelerate from there. You can't just drop it back. We'll just put it into, put the brakes on.
That's factored in.
That's right.
But sorry, what were you saying? Sydney to LA in
a bit over an hour, maybe. So it's about 13,000 kilometres to go across there.
You could live in Sydney and commute.
That's right. Commute to work. Now, there's a few ways they do this. One of the ways they do this is to go very high. You're talking about so normal aircraft, A380, 747s, that type of thing, is maybe 10 or 12 kilometres above the Earth, so 30,000, 36,000 feet. We're talking about with this maybe 25 to 40 kilometres above the Earth, not going above the Kármán line, which is about 100 kilometres above the Earth, which is typically where you say that you're in outer space. Roughly. Yeah. And it's not, it's not like a definite, you've just crossed over the border into outer space, but that 100 kilometre, I think it's Kármán, is that the right pronunciation? Kármán line, I think.
Good question.
Right. So
that's your homework, folks.
That's right. So this goes up fairly high, and I've talked to some other people about this, and the first thing they thought of was, that's easy. You just go up above the Earth and wait for the Earth to rotate underneath you and then come back down and land.
Nah.
But it's not that. Yeah. And the example that I give that's along those lines is Sydney to Perth, and sorry for our international listeners, I don't know some of the other floats and the flight times, but I know when you fly Sydney to Perth, it's roughly a 5-hour flight. When you fly Perth to Sydney, it's roughly a 4-hour flight. And so either they take the long way across there. No, it's pretty much a straight line in both directions. But I've had people say to me, that's obvious because the Earth's rotating, so you're going against the rotation till you get there quicker, which of course is complete bollocks, except maybe there's a little bit of truth in that, which I'll get to in a moment. But you're all in the same inertial frame of reference. A helicopter doesn't hover 10 metres above the Earth, wait for the Earth to spin underneath it, and then land and go, look at that, we just hovered for an hour and we've just moved, a couple hundred kilometres across the land. Of course, all your atmosphere, as the Earth's spinning, all your atmosphere is, of course, spinning with the Earth. So when that plane goes up even at 10 kilometres above the Earth, it's still in the same inertial frame of reference.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure you spend a lot of time teaching kids about inertial
Well, I was just
frame
going
of
to say,
reference.
this is sounding a little bit like the Halfel-Keating experiment where they took an atomic clock up in two planes, and one flew with the rotation and another one flew against the rotation. They compared it to a couple of atomic clocks on the ground.
Yep.
But no, that's all about special relativity, and that's not applying to this.
No, that's right.
That gives you a difference of about, 200 microseconds.
And that was to prove Einstein's theory of relativity. But
yeah.
that was more about the speed the clock was travelling at, wasn't it? Not
it was
so
about
much
the speed, but relative to a point out in space.
Yeah.
So that's something different to this, which is actually getting assistance from currents in the air.
Correct. And that's the crucial point you've hit on there. The jet stream that you get, the wind currents you get, are predominantly going from west to east at maybe anywhere from 50 to 150 kilometres an hour. And that's why you get a faster travel time going with the wind. Obviously, the other direction, you're going against the wind, which you don't notice it would happen anywhere you fly, but you don't notice if it's a 1 hour flight because it might make a few minutes difference. But when it's a 5 hour flight or a 4 hour flight, it makes a big difference there. So that's certainly part of it. Now, when I say there's a little bit there is a little tiny bit that does come down to the rotation of the Earth, because you do get a natural movement of air from hot to cold, or air moving in to fill in hot air as hot air rises. So when you get heating around the equator, you get some movement of the air, and the rotation of the Earth does create a Coriolis effect. So that's predominantly why you get those west to east winds. So when someone says it's because of the rotation of the Earth, you go, well, not really the way you're thinking, but yes, a little bit because of the Coriolis effect. Yeah. So with all that information tucked away in the back of your mind, when these hypersonic planes go to, say, 40 kilometres above the Earth, they're still in that same inertial frame of reference. You're still in the same atmosphere of Earth. So you're getting no advantage out of the air rotating. But here's the secret. When you get to those sort of speeds, Mach 10, you've got a fair amount of wind resistance hitting your plane. So you're getting a lot of heating.
Even where the air is so thin up at that high?
Well, this is the secret. Getting to the height. So they're trying to get to a height where the air resistance is low enough that you just don't burn up the plane. A bit like when you get spaceships coming back in from outer space, burning up on re-entry. If you're flying along at Mach 10, you're talking about a fair amount of heat, a fair amount of collisions that are happening with the air. So you want to go thin enough, but if you go so thin, then you get no lift from the wings, but also you need air for your engines to burn the jet fuel. So if you go so thin, what are you doing then? Because a rocket ship has...
A rocket takes its own
Correct,
oxygen.
that's right.
Yeah,
it doesn't
right.
need oxygen.
Yeah.
These are still using traditional jet engines where it needs oxygen for that combustion. So you can't go so thin that you go, we've got no oxygen up here. This is great, no air resistance, but the engines just stop. So can we click, click, click,
and we're not at the
again?
stage where we want to actually strap ourselves to rockets to get to LA.
Oh, not really.
If it's just to get to LA.
That's right. I'd prefer not. And we've got enough oxygen around, we can probably use it. So that's where they're finding around this 25 to 40 kilometre mark is where they'll go. The other thing that's interesting, and I'd recommend, I won't go into great detail about this, but go and look up Morkoven's hypothesis, Morkovin. So his hypothesis was proposed back in the mid-20th century that said the air turbulence created at Mach 5, at Mach 6, at high Mach levels was about the same as the turbulence created around, say, Mach 1, which doesn't make sense. You think surely it's going to be more turbulent at those higher speeds, and that's some of the testing they've been doing. One organisation has spent 11 years working out whether Morkoven's hypothesis is correct. They've spent 6 years building a wind tunnel that can go to Mach 6. Now, that'd be an interesting wind tunnel, wouldn't it? Turn on the fans, don't get locked in there because you're going to be having air hit you at Mach 6.
Yeah, right.
And with
the wrong place to be flying a kite.
Wrong place. It's going to be a strong kite. So when you talk about putting something in that and then doing the testing, they're actually finding that Morkoven, as with so many theoretical physicists, Morkoven actually knew what he was talking about, and the turbulence at Mach 6 so far they've been able to test to is about the same as Mach 1 or Mach maybe 1.5. So you're not getting extreme things happening to your plane where it's going to vibrate apart or it's going to rupture completely. It's now really just trying to attack the problem with air resistance and the plane heating up, because there's still some air at 25 kilometres above the Earth. It's still going through it very fast, so you're still going to get some heating there, and it's going to actually have some impact there. But if they can get all this solved, and they are very confident they will solve this particular problem, and they think they'll solve this by maybe 2035, so maybe 10 years' time, you can get on a plane, take off, go up to 25 kilometres above the Earth, go along at Mach 10 and land in LA, take across there, have breakfast, have lunch, come back home for dinner. So that would be incredible. So hypersonic flight keep an eye out for it. I don't imagine how much a ticket would be, though. I can't imagine it'd be $20.
All right, this next story is a toasty idea that's going to kill two birds with one stone. Now, we know that the AI revolution sucks a lot of power, and it's really set the global electricity bill through the roof. And with all that CPU business happening, a phenomenal load of heat comes out of those data centres, which is just wasted to the environment usually. So a couple in the UK, with a bit of initiative this winter, have decided to ditch their conventional heaters in exchange for housing a data hub out in their back shed. The result is a toasty warm house with pumped heat from their back shed and a heating bill that's paid for by the owners of the data hub. A clever little idea, Matt.
I do like it. A big shout out here to Terence and Leslie Bridges. They're the first people in the UK to actually say, you know what, I'm going to go with this program. I'm going to have a go at this.
So if AI is going to generate all this heat,
Yep.
we might as well use that heat.
Exactly right. And we're better to use that than in the UK. Obviously, heating bills are probably pretty high there. So there's a thing called a Thermify Heat Hub. It's a small package or a small data centre. It's not like a traditional data centre. It's got very small computers in there. There's about 500 computers in this particular heat hub. You stick it out in your back shed, find a bit of space in your back shed. It's taken their heating bill, or their energy bill more accurately, from £375, UK pounds, per month down to about £40 per month.
Oh, wow.
So straight away,
like
fantastic.
A tenth, yeah.
Now, part of this program, and so they might be cheating a little bit with that, because part of this program to put this on was also they got some solar panels and a battery, because they wanted to make sure there was a decent battery backup, because a data centre would have a decent battery backup.
Yeah.
So you've got a bit of that as well. So if the power drops out, at least you've got that data centre still running.
Sorry, so do they own the data hub as well?
No. Thermify would come along and they would say, sure, we're going to put that in there. We're not going to pay you to host this, but we're going to give you some solar panels and a battery, which will help you out. But we know we're going to save you 300 odd quid per month on your heating bill by having that little bit of space taken up in your back shed. So you do that and you say, well, they're not paying me, but they're saving me £3,600 per year, roughly, on having that in the back shed. I can sacrifice a bit of room in the back shed, that's fine. And it's just another one of those innovative solutions. You distribute, I don't mind this part of it, you distribute your data centre. So rather than one data centre, someone would be being worried about there might be an attack on the data centre. You go and blow that data centre or do something terrible to that data centre. Well, whoops, that's all of that computing gone, all of that services. You distribute these across homes throughout the UK, throughout the world, and your data centre that you're managing is everywhere.
That's amazing.
There might be some inconvenience sometimes, because sometimes there might be something physical that needs to be done in those computers, but in general, most people, in fact, I've talked to data centre owners, and they say it's really important for our customers that they can get access to the data centre. They want to know that they can get in 24 hours a day. We put eye scans in, a whole range of things, and they visit the data centre about never, because they don't need to.
Well, yeah, why?
They just feel more comfortable if they can do it.
They can do it,
That's
right.
But in this case, the computers will be set up, it'll be put in their home. They might come along once a year and do a physical service on it or check things out. Who knows? But the whole concept is distributed data centres and, more importantly, heating. And there's been other solutions that have been worked on. So there is a Devon swimming pool, just a public swimming pool, that's warmed by a mini data centre, the same kind of thing. They've got a data centre, they've got water that flows through the data centre and back to the pool. The pool's losing that heat just through evaporation from the surface area of the pool. So they're heating that pool.
They've extended their swimming season.
They have, absolutely right, without a doubt. And there's also another one which I didn't mind, where there's a data centre that's installed near a lake. The lake's a couple of metres deep, and the water at the bottom of the lake, obviously not exposed to the sun, is colder. So they're rotating the water from the bottom of the lake through the data centre and then back into the lake. So it might heat up the lake by 0.001 degrees Celsius, but the data centre's getting that nice cold water from the bottom of the lake. So rather than just have some air conditioning and flick that on, there are various ways people are working out to cool down data centres, which they need to do because they're generating
an amazing use of initiative there, I reckon. Okay, so I think doomsday preppers may want to go and buy a couple dozen more cans of soup for the bunker after this next story. It's safe to say that many people have either seen Blade Runner or Terminator or any number of films of that sort of branch of sci-fi. The big difference between those movies and reality is that up until now, robots have been pretty easy to spot in a crowd. Even humanoid robots have been, for the better part, much more robot than humans. Humans look like humans and robots look like robots, and that's the way many of us like it. So, thanks to the folks of Xpeng, That line has gotten a whole lot blurrier as of now, Matt.
It's actually quite a fascinating video. I'd recommend people go and watch it. Xpeng.
I didn't
Iron.
watch it because I just don't want to be. I'm not ready to be at that point yet. I watched Blade Runner. I watched Terminator because that's fiction.
That's right. And this isn't fiction. And this is the funny part. People did think it was fiction. There have been some other manufacturers of robots who have purported to have a robot, a semi-autonomous robot, a robot doing its own thing. And we know we've talked about it before. And it's either a person inside, a C-3PO type example of a robot, or it's being controlled by someone that's basically got a VR headset controlling that. So when they showed off Xpeng, it walked, and I watched the video, and it walked like someone had had 3 beers. It was a little bit ungainly. It just didn't look perfectly stable, but it walked along across the stage and did a few things, and it looked like it was just not quite coordinated, a bit unco, as say, just a couple of beers under their belt. And so people in the crowd were a bit suspicious. They went, nah, it's the size of a human. You've got someone inside there. And they showed it off and said, this will be ready next year and we'll start selling it, all the rest of it. And the only way they could convince the audience was some of the engineers came out and said, they were a bit offended, in fact, by the whole accusation, but they said, we'll prove it to you. So they got a pair of scissors out and they cut off the outer skin on the leg. And sure enough, there were all the mechanics or the actual bionic leg sitting underneath there. Now, they didn't cut off the whole suit because it probably is expensive to cut it all off. Maybe the rest of it was human and this person had a fake leg, I'm not sure. But I was convinced that it definitely was a robot. And the thing that I was most impressed by was the ankle, because when you watched it walk, the ankle, we've got a complicated ankle. We've got 7 tarsals in our ankle. It's quite complicated how it all fits together. And we have an ankle flick as we walk. And this robot had that same little flick. And I reckon anyone that was watching that would go, that's it. That's definitely a human. Because look at the way that ankle just does a little flick. A little, you know, when you push off when you're walking, you're not really thinking about it that much, but you do that little final flick as you move your ankle. And this did that perfectly. And then when the leg was removed or the outer skin was removed and you watched it, just the number of little bits of mechanical engineering that were in that leg to give it that flick. So
this has got a real Terminator feel about it.
It does. So you've basically got the whole robot powered by a solid-state battery. You've got custom AI chips, 3 of them, that make it capable of about 2,250 trillion operations per second. I reckon that's enough to pick up the clothes off the floor of my bedroom.
We're ready.
We're
there.
That's
but
right.
At least, you know, even if it can't, this thing still looks like a human and you wouldn't be able to spot it in a lineup.
You would just think someone was a bit unsteady. That's it. That was the only difference. If it was dressed in normal clothes, you'd say that person's a bit. And nowadays, it wouldn't be that unusual to put a mask on. So you could dress this in normal clothes. You could have a mask to cover their face, maybe some sort of head covering, because it's not that unusual now to see people with masks on after COVID. So you could look in a line and see people walking along in a line.
But I've seen robotics where they've got the human heads, like humanoid heads on them, and they look.
They look pretty
human.
Good. Yeah, that's right. So it's got 2,250 trillion operations per second. It's got basically 82 degrees of freedom across its body, 22 degrees of freedom in each hand. And so they've got all these different ways they can move the hand. It's got a humanoid spine, flexible synthetic skin, which is the one they cut off there. So it does look like it's truly human. Now, when you order one of these, which you can't quite yet, when you order one, you can order different skin colourings, different skin type, clothing on it maybe if you want. You can order it with hair. What length hair do you want? You can order it to be male or female, whatever level you want. And here's the scary part.
Oh, sorry, the other bits weren't scary. Okay.
The scary part is the company executives say that their mission, their ambition
is to arm this thing.
No.
Sorry, I jumped in there.
Maybe that's what they say.
That's later on.
At board meetings, not public.
That'll be our January shows.
That's right.
Right, okay.
Publicly, they say their ambition is to not make robots, but make humans.
Ah.
Now we can do that. We know how to do that as well. We've got classes at kindergarten, primary school kids to go through to say, this is how you make humans, okay? It's a bit weird, but this is how you do it.
That's right. We've been doing it for a long time.
That's right. They're going to make humans.
They've decided they're going to make humans a different way.
Now, they say that they'll start to sell these next year. They'll be in commercial roles such as tour guides, sales assistants. They're still saying household use is somewhere down the track, but it's probably more the cost of them more so than if they could be a tour guide, if they could be a traffic diversion staff member, they could probably do the stuff around my house, but maybe they'll be too expensive for me to have around my house. But it is fascinating. Go and have a look at it. I know it'll be scary, but go and have a look and see how it walks across the stage.
Wow. Now, you may have heard of Waymo. We've talked about Waymo a little bit in the past. It's the driverless taxi company that's become something of a feature on the streets of San Francisco. Well, they've also hit Phoenix, LA, Atlanta and Austin, Texas as well now. And for the better part, they've managed to steer clear of bad news headlines with very few autonomous driving incidents. Well, Waymo is spreading their wings and lobbying to go international now. And, get this, they may be headed for Sydney in the near future. Matt, this is a bit exciting, but with the pollies, will they be brave enough to let a fleet loose in Sydney CBD?
I hope so. And it'll probably come down to the staff of the departments who then convince the pollies.
Yeah.
At the moment, they're actually in talks as we speak, right this second, with Transport for New South Wales to get permission to start running these trials. Now, the issue is, as we've talked about so often, that we get the technology advancing to a point where the legislation says, hold on, wait for me, I'll catch up soon.
Yeah.
At the moment, there's about somewhere in the vicinity of 700 legal barriers to autonomous vehicles in Australia.
Yeah.
So
now, Australia's highly regulated, very conservative as far as all this goes.
Correct.
It could be a while before it actually happens, but...
That's right. So even in here in New South Wales, we require approval for any automotive technology trial. Now, having said that, they've done one. They actually did a smart ute trial in Dubbo. It was a very controlled trial, and there was someone sitting in the driver's seat. So it was one vehicle. It was very limited in what it did. They had certain routes that it would go over, but that trial all went along swimmingly. So it was all fantastic.
Yeah, right.
Having Waymo in the streets of Sydney is very different to have one ute in the streets around Dubbo. And the streets of Sydney obviously a bit busier than Dubbo, but also these are going to be not someone sitting behind the driver's or in the driver's seat. There'll be no one sitting there. Level 4 autonomy is what these vehicles are. No human supervision, no licensed driver required, no one there ready to grab the wheel if something goes wrong. And it's all a bit weird. And in fact, I haven't turned on the full self-driving in my Tesla yet. It's available now in Australia, but I jumped in someone's car the other day that's got full self-driving on there. And it's a bit weird. You're driving along, and say, for example, you're at traffic lights where you're turning right and the opposing traffic is also turning right, and this is in Australia, turning right from the left lane. And you're kind of driving at the other cars for a period of time as you're driving and turning right. The cars are coming directly at you, and that's where sometimes I thought the phantom braking and the particular person in this driver's seat was there with his hands poised above the steering wheel, foot poised above the brake, and it just went along and just turned around the corner and off it went. Wow. So we actually put in the address from one point. It was a 5-minute drive to where we had to go to, and it drove all the way there, and the only problem it had was when it got to the car park at the other end, it was a bit confused about the car park and cars coming the other way because there were no lanes marked. It was a bit confused about where it should go in there, but it got the whole way to that car park with no problems at all. So it's getting better all the time. I actually wonder, and I had this conversation with this particular gentleman, I wanted to go out on the highway to have a bit of a play because I reckon one of the trickiest things is overtaking. You're driving along, let's say the speed limit's 100 k's an hour, and you're driving along, and there's a car in front of you doing 90. We as humans do a whole range of things. We move out across to the side of the road. We lean our head a bit out to the side to see around that car. Yeah. We're looking at the line, solid line or dashed line on the road, and we're making all these calculations, and then finally we go, yep, it's safe to overtake. And here's the other one. That car in front of us might have another car in front. So is it far enough in front that I can overtake and get back into that gap? Or is the car in front of me waiting to overtake as well because there's another car in front of them that's going along slow? So should I be polite and wait for that car to overtake that one before I go and line up to overtake? Or do I overtake both of them? There's all these things that are going on, and we make these decisions because we're clever humans. We judge all this, and we get it wrong sometimes. Don't get me wrong here. We do make mistakes and people do die on the roads. But an autonomous vehicle making all of those judgments, that's a fairly complicated algorithm.
Deal.
That's right.
It is.
And how far can it see? And the other thing is that just turn your silence off there or turn your ears off a second, please, because when I overtake, maybe I go just a touch above the speed limit just to get around that car a bit quicker. Yeah. Whereas I don't think an autonomous driving vehicle would break the speed limit. So it goes to overtake, and it's only, say, 10 kilometres an hour above that car.
And instead it takes 5 or 6 kilometres to get around the car in front. Yeah.
Or overtaking a truck, which take a lot longer. So that's that part
of
the challenge.
I was all excited about this driverless car business, autonomous cars, because I have a son who I don't think will drive in his life. So to have an autonomous car gives him mobility and flexibility to be a bit more autonomous himself.
Yeah.
So I was really looking forward to it until you told me that.
Look, I think it's still there. But
we're never going to get one.
Well, I think Waymo getting the taxis driving, and it's a limited circumstance. But in San Fran, they're doing bigger trips now. It started off in San Francisco, a very small radius around the CBD. They mapped those roads, they knew those roads, they knew all the pitfalls around those roads, but they've started to expand the radius. And again, in Sydney, I would love to see, is it just the CBD, or can you get in there and drive out to Penrith? How far can you go? But it's just a weird feeling that you jump in there. And of course, now they've got steering wheels. They use the Jaguar I-Pace is the standard vehicle they use in the Waymo fleet. But the next range of vehicles they bring out won't have a steering wheel. Why do you waste that space? You can sit in the driver's seat if you want. Yeah. You can sit there, and it might be a bit weird for people next to you if you were sitting in the driver's seat in a driverless taxi.
Reading a newspaper.
That's right. Taking it easy, playing on your phone, working
eating
away.
Some cereal.
And going, hold on, that guy just drove past there. What's he doing? So it's happening. I would love to see it happen in Sydney. I haven't been to San Francisco. I haven't been anywhere where they've had driverless taxis and had a go in one, but getting a go in one in Sydney, I think it would be absolutely fantastic.
So it seems that one of the prerequisites for being a scammer is that there needs to be no limit for how low you can go, apparently. It seems that scum-sucking, stinking swamp life might be just a level or two above an internet scammer, I reckon. It wouldn't take a terribly complicated survey to discover that most of the people who access Australia's Centrelink welfare services are truly needy types of people, despite the blanket verdict of some conservative commentators. And these sorts of people are particularly vulnerable to being scammed, these people who are receiving the Centrelink welfare services. So low-hanging fruit is particularly appealing to the worst of the worst type of scammers, Matt.
Yeah, and if you got something from Centrelink and you were relying on that payment to come through each fortnight to pay your rent. That's right, just to buy food and pay rent.
Yeah.
And if suddenly you need to click on something to continue those payments coming through, you can imagine you'd be pretty keen to click on those links. So Centrelink, for those internationally, Centrelink covers things from our perspective for things such as it might be job seeker payments, so people that are waiting to be able to get some work. It might be student allowances, people paying students that are studying, paying their rent each week.
Disability pensions.
All those, all the different types of pensions. It might be aged care pensions, all those sort of disability services, family tax benefits, even Medicare, so a whole range of things. So it's when you're looking for a target audience, then if you send out some scam messages that are a bank, you're going to get 10 or 20% of the population, depending on which bank you choose. But if you send out something to say you're from Centrelink, you're pretty confident you're going to hit about maybe 100% of the audience because we've all got Medicare cards, for example, or we've got a whole range of these services. So they detected in a latest target where they picked up an operation, 270,000 malicious emails impersonating Centrelink and Services Australia. They were sending about 70,000 fake emails per month. Wow. So a huge volume. And they're just relying on an occasional hit. They don't need to get many to say yes to that, and you're going okay. Vulnerable Australians, as we talked about in that. The operation was MCTO 3001. I'm not sure where that comes from, whether that was what the authorities labelled the operation or that was what they had. And essentially, a lot of this was done by AI. They were cloning genuine government communications. They were making it near perfect because they were using AI to do the cloning of that. And AI, not like some of the emails you used to see where you go, they can't even spell that word right, or the English is obviously terrible. That's obviously not come from Centrelink. They're using AI to make this better. They're talking about the fact that Chinese state hackers used AI to automate up to 90% of cyber attacks. So they're not having to work too hard themselves because it's all being done via AI. So now you can do more attacks with fewer people, and you're probably going to get it more accurate in how you go. So
goodness, mate.
I suppose just one of those other ones. We do talk about scams a little bit, and I try not to talk about them too much because there are so many out there, but I thought this one, coming up towards Christmas, people are relying on Centrelink payments. They're relying on that to be able to maybe get enough money to have a Christmas lunch or buy some presents. Just be so suspicious of anything you get from Centrelink, and any links you want to click on. The old adage is hover over it, see where that link goes, and then don't click on it anyway, no matter where it says it's going to go.
I first heard about nanobots, I reckon, probably about 20 years ago, I reckon. It seems so fanciful that tiny robots could move about your body and perform specific jobs in targeted areas. Tiny little robots in your blood vessels? What? It's the stuff of Hollywood movies, surely. Well, not as we approach 2026, folks. We're living in the future, and we now live in a time where tiny robots can travel in your bloodstream and be controlled to do jobs inside your organs. And Matthew, I reckon this is a spectacular development in medicine.
So did you first see this in Honey, I Shrunk the Kids? Was that the first exposure?
What was it? Inner Space, I think, was a movie. Or was that in the 80s or 90s? No, that's not what it was. It might have been Dr. Carl or someone was mentioning it. And I was thinking, that just sounds too fanciful.
It does, doesn't it? And when you go the next step, so where they're at now is getting drugs, getting devices inside your blood vessels. Most of our blood vessels aren't that large. Getting things inside those blood vessels to go around and do things is fantastic. But now they're at the point where they're using some type of ion, some type of nanoparticles that have got tantalum in them so that they can actually be controlled magnetically. So they'll put something into your bloodstream, doesn't matter where it goes. They can inject it in your arm, and then they can use magnets to take that particular drug that you need. So the main focus has been, stroke patients. So you've got a blockage somewhere in your head.
Yeah.
How you get the drug that you need to free up that blockage without maybe affecting the rest of your body.
Damaging somewhere else in the body.
Exactly right. And we know that drugs, the old saying is that all drugs can do you damage. It's just the dosage. So we want to make sure you're not giving so much dosage that frees up some blood vessels in your brain that doesn't then make it so that your blood's so thin that it's affecting other things. I think
this is the problem for chemotherapy and cancer treatment and stuff. So,
It is. You're exactly right. They just blast the body and you lose your hair, you become weaker, your immune system is affected because you're trying to kill some cells in one particular spot. Yeah. So the idea here is they inject some type of drug inside a microbot, and then they'll use magnets on the outside of your body, and magnetism is not going to affect your body, so it can go through your body and not affect it, and they'll then basically move those particular items to where they need to go, and then they've got an ability to release. They've got a mechanism inside it, all at this microscopic level, a mechanism inside that releases that drug when they get it to the right spot. The other thing they can do is they can use X-rays to see exactly where it is, because it's got some metal inside it that will show up in an X-ray. Often other parts of our body, soft tissue doesn't show up that well in an X-ray, obviously. Yeah. So when you put a drug in a body normally, you're not going to see it with an X-ray. How are you going to see where that drug goes and whether it's released effectively? Well, we know the microbot is in the certain spot we need it to be. We know it's been released there, so we're pretty confident that it's gone to where it needs to go. So just fantastic.
Yeah, this is amazing.
Yeah, so it can move it along. The actual magnet will move it along in your blood cells at about 4 millimeters per second. So that's not too bad. That seems like a reasonable speed to me to actually move it along through your blood vessels and get it where it needs to go. I don't know what happens when they get to certain joins and how they go to a T intersection and make sure they go the right way. But if you're controlling that particular microbot with magnets, presumably you've got pretty good control over that to make it go where you want it to go. So how cool is that? I just thought that was fascinating.
Absolutely. I was chatting to a friend recently who's in the music industry, and we were talking about making money out of music. It's just so hard these days because it's so much more difficult than before with the way music is accessed these days. It's odd because any catchy tune seems to be picked up in an instant by social media users and used as backing tracks for all sorts of videos, and they can be spread around the whole planet in a heartbeat. Surely uploading music for sampling must be easier than ever before. But Matt, one particular tune has caused a real stir in late October, and now it's seemingly vanished. What's happened there?
It has. So I'd love to say to people, go and have a listen to it, but I think you'd struggle to find it. The song was called I Run, and it surged. It was globally going through the roof as a fantastic new hit. It basically was number 8 on the ARIA charts, number 9 midweek in the UK. It hit the top 25 or climbed into number 25 on Spotify's global rankings. That's not too bad. TikTok was going through the roof. It was saying that it was showing up in the latest top 10, I think, in the latest viral videos.
Yeah, so everyone was accessing it, using it to back up their dance tracks and whatever.
All sorts of things. And then finally it came out that, actually it was completely generated by AI. No human was involved. Yeah. And when you say no human was involved, someone had to say, go and make this song. So is that enough of a human involvement? No, it's been taken down from basically all those sites now. And this is the thing, no one picked up on it. They went, that sounds pretty good. That's some nice music. Well done to whoever created that music. But you're now at the point where you can't pick it. The vocals were great, the song was great, the music was great. So how do you know that's not AI? And that was one. They'd obviously put a fair bit of work into marketing this. They probably had some bots out there downloading it to help some of those numbers go through the roof. But if you see it in there, and I know when I go for a run, I just use the top 100 on Apple Music. I don't want to go and think about what music I want to listen to. It's a good way to discover new music. So that sort of thing, it would just pop up in a top 10 or top 100 automatically because it was being downloaded by so many people.
Look,
So,
I've got to say, look, when I'm working away and I'm trying to do something on the computer, and so I just need some sort of background sound just to knock out all the other sounds, right? I'll put on some old retro jazz, and so I find that I don't tap my toes to it, I don't sing along to it. But lately I've been accessing some jazz that I've never heard before that's old and retro, and it's not because it's old and retro, it's because it's AI who've tapped into that sound and written music.
so you're convinced these...
Hours and hours and hours of music that's 1940s jazz.
Are you convinced that it's all AI generated?
Yes.
Wow.
Well, actually, the site actually says this is AI generated.
Okay. And that's a bit different.
Well, I had to look at it. I had to
right.
look for it because initially I was just looking for old songs, whatever, and I know a lot of them. But this was nothing that I'd ever heard before.
Yeah, wow. And I think it's a bit different when they do actually say, yep, this is AI. It's all up front. No one's trying to hide behind that.
Yeah, but I do have a problem because there are people trying to make money and stuff like
Yeah,
that, and
yeah,
that's the thing they do in their creativity. Yeah. Anyway,
So, but this one didn't say any of that. This one was just a new song. It gave it an artist's name. There was credit there for an artist's name. No one had heard of that artist, whatever. New artists come out all the time, but it absolutely surged through the charts.
Goodness me, we live in a new world.
But that's one that's been picked up. So that's one that we found out. How many other ones out there? How many other jazz tracks? How many other songs are on the charts now that don't have a human singing, playing instruments, all the rest of it?
That was the lament of this conversation that I was having with this muso.
Yep.
Yeah, that they just said it's just so much AI-generated stuff these days.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, that's all we have for you today, folks. This cup, which once runneth over, has now run as dry as a dodgy pub chicken schnitty after a counter lunch. Gotta love mixing metaphors and similes, Matt. Thanks for another cracking tech talk.
Yeah, look, I'm not sure what I'm going to do this week. I'm going to go and maybe check out my size, my real size. I'm not sure if I want to know my real size, but go and do a body scan. And see
Which way? Is it going to go too big, or is it worse to go too small?
Oh, I don't know. I just don't know. Maybe we'll think of ourselves as being a bit better than we really are.
I know someone who once went to buy a pair of shorts and had to keep going smaller and smaller and smaller, and the guy handed over some extra small shorts, and he said, no, he just walked out. He just wasn't going to take the extra small.
So maybe the sizing, where the vanity sizing, maybe that's gone too far.
All right, folks, you've been listening to Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Thanks for tuning in once again. Tech Talk is brewed with the very best hops and the finest yeast to give you a glass-clinking cheers and that cool, crisp summertime taste that brings you back time and time again. I'm your host, James Eddy, reminding you that as we sign off today and you move on freely on your own journey through time and space, once again, don't forget, we'll be back again with another fresh kit bag full of the latest news from the world of technology in another week's time. We hope to catch you then, and who knows, maybe even one or two of your besties may come along for the ride if we were to say maybe you were to introduce us. In the meantime, take care and we'll see you when we see you.